Bitcoin is changing. The 4-year cycle no longer exists. All your models are destroyed. That's right, everyone. Bitcoin's predictable 4-year cycle is coming to an end. And this is exactly what mainstream crypto news would have you believe. And it's got some people scrambling, trying to figure out, what is Bitcoin going to do? Sit back. It's time to chill. Although there's a lot of people screaming from the rooftops that this cycle is different, there's a lot of evidence to actually show that it's very much the same. One of my favorite parts about the bull markets is that a lot of old ideas get questioned, right? And for some reason, there's this kind of like this type of imaginary reality that we tend to create. I don't understand if it's mental gymnastics or it's just cope or over excitement about the current cycle as to what Bitcoin's going to do and all this stuff. But something happens where all of a sudden people decide this time it's different. Now, with the current cycle, I did see some Bitcoiners allude to the fact that Bitcoin's 4-year cycle that includes a blow off top is now actually going to become a staircase, a very slow grinding climb up, wherein the institutions, right, are going to be able to buy all of this Bitcoin on the cheap before they run it up to prices that nobody can afford. As if $100,000 USD right now is just so cheap. So it's not that I think that that's necessarily false. I just don't think that that's necessarily accurate. I think that somewhere in between is the truth. And there's no shortage of this FUD. We've got an article right here out of Cointelegraph alluding to the exact same thing. A Bitcoin Reserve Act may end crypto's 4-year boom and bust cycle. Make no mistake, it's not a crypto cycle. It is a Bitcoin cycle. Okay, there's no crypto cycle. All right, there's a reason that there's over 10 million cryptos and their market cap doesn't even add up to Bitcoins. And I understand, some people will be like, well, market cap isn't a valid metric, and you should be looking at this, and this. It doesn't make a difference. You need to zoom out. And the point is that all of that garbage doesn't add up to Bitcoin. So clearly, it's not a crypto cycle. It's just a Bitcoin cycle. Further evidence of this was actually an article dropped by Benzinga indicating that's it. The cycle is dead. So here we go. This is the going narrative that we're seeing in this particular bull run. The 4-year cycle is changing. The 4-year cycle is dead. Strategic Bitcoin reserves are going to impact how this cycle works. And some people would even argue that it already has. Now, although there's a lot of noise and there's a lot of different people championing different types of narratives for this cycle, I'm also hearing super cycle, which essentially would indicate that not only are we not going to see the 80% or the 70 to 80% declines in Bitcoin's overall price, but on top of that, not only would we see that decline, but we would see it continue to move higher, and this would be an argument for this staircase up. But I think that when we zoom out, I think ARK Invest actually said it best. I put a link to this report in the show notes so that everybody can take a look at it. And here's what they had to say. Bitcoin's performance is roughly in sync with the historical 4-year cycles. The reality is this, okay? In each of the previous cycles, I have heard the same thing. The 4-year cycle. The first time the first time I came to Bitcoin and started accumulating Bitcoin, and that was my first cycle was 2017. Well, guess what? Okay, after we had run up from about $400 and something to over to 19,900 and change, there were people calling for 50K. There were people in 2017 8 years ago saying this is the super cycle. And I'll explain why people were saying that. Because the institutions had arrived, right? And we all know now, when we look back in hindsight, that was 8 years ago. The institutions were not there. The institutions, however, are here now. Who also is here now? Well, we've got about 20 different 20 states approximately that are attempting to pass some type of strategic reserve in relation to Bitcoin and or crypto. Of those approximately 20, there's only 5 of them that actually have Bitcoin written in the bill, okay, that it actually specifies Bitcoin. So the reason why I'm explaining all of this is, yes, institutions are here. Yes, the government is here, whether or not you like that. I do not like that. But hey, guess what? Bitcoin is the money of enemies. So the people in the government, they're going to also hold it if their incentives line up. But my point is this, is that in the end, when there's a lot of noise, it seems like everything is happening, everything is about to blow up, everything is changing. It's just not the way that things work, okay? And it wouldn't surprise me if the news leading up to these states and countries doing a strategic Bitcoin reserve is what brings us in this cycle to the blow off top. And it really wouldn't surprise me if those states and countries are the ones who kick off the next following bull run. Because at that point, countries, states, all of that, they're going to have all of their ducks in a row and ready to actually begin moving funds into making these purchases. Do I know if that plays out like that? No, I don't. This is just what I believe based on what I've experienced and what I'm seeing now. I've seen a lot of people get wrecked because they thought that Bitcoin was going to go to $1 million. So they were mortgaging their house. You know, that's the other thing. There were, the influencers that were telling you to mortgage your house at the previous top. They're not reminding you that they told you that this time. They're pretending they never said that shit. Okay? But they did. There was also people telling you get on zero, which means zero fiat and have everything in Bitcoin. Now, indeed, that may work for some people. It all depends on, you have to know how you live. You have to understand your expenses. You also have to understand your desires. Like, this is not just a clear cut, like, yeah, I'm going to do this and get rich. No, you need to know yourself. You need to understand how you live. This type of blanket advice, it doesn't help anybody. You need to treat your situation as an individual situation. So for me, what I have always done was I never purchased more Bitcoin than I could afford, number one. Number two, I stayed away from listening to these hopium dealers, okay? And I always go back to this example, and I totally like Tone Vase, okay? But I remember in the last cycle, okay, when we got into the 3K range, okay, for the Bitcoin price, okay, when we were nearing the bottom, right? We were pretty much at the bottom. Not only him, but a few other people were calling for 1,700. Okay, they were calling for $1,700 Bitcoin, and people were preparing themselves for that. Well, I'll tell you something, and I've said it before. If you listened to that and you waited, you missed out on buying the bottom because you didn't just stack what you could reasonably. Okay? It's not worth it, guys. It's not worth it to pay attention to these hype cycles. You need to understand these cheerleaders. This is what they want. They need the fervent excitement. They need all of this, right? They are hype people. This is what they do. Okay? So you got to zoom out. Okay? There is no actual evidence that the 4-year cycle is broken. Okay? There is no evidence that we are actually in some type of a super cycle. And I also don't think that all of a sudden we've changed to a stepping staircase method where we slowly grind up. That's all I wanted to talk about today, guys. I'll catch you on the next one.